you very much. Are you all sitting comfortably? So how did we get from Peter Hemphill's surgery on the side of his house at Spring Hill to the practice that William's just been describing when we were up for several national awards and so on? How did we get to that stage? And that all happened around the time we moved into this building. It wasn't as big then, there was only one story, and it didn't come out as far. And it all happened about then and in the early 70s. So that's what I'm going to tell you about. You've got here today the 5 partners who were running this practice a quarter of a century ago. And they're all here and they're all looking in reasonable shape. And you've got one who was here half a century ago when the health centre opened. So at the end of the 60s, you may think there's a lot of building going on at the moment, but we had 4 major building sites going on at once in this village. We had Churchill Crescent, Wesley Drive, Orchard Avenue and Red House Drive. And so all these families were moving in, and the first thing they did was to have babies. And in those days, we looked after most of our mothers. We delivered the majority of them in the GP maternity unit in Townlands, which unfortunately is no more, and we did nearly all the antenatal clinics, even for the patients who had been delivered in Reading. So that was, we went to our own patients who were being delivered, and that was a nice bonding exercise. And there might even be 1 or 2 of you here who had a baby in Townlands. Are there any? Anybody got a hand up? Yes, there we are. So that's what we were up to. In addition to that, we had 2 infant welfare clinics for mothers and new babies in the 2 war memorial halls, and we had a branch surgery in Binfield Heath, to which Peter Hemphill would retire 2 mornings a week, and if we were lucky, we could find him in the Bottle and Glass later in the afternoon, working out what he was going to have for lunch. So there was Peter Hemphill, Tom Stewart and myself when we moved in here in the first week in July in 1970. As I've sort of said, the building wasn't quite as big as it is now. And so in the process, we pulled in the infant welfare clinics, we pulled in the branch surgery, so we had Peter up here all Tuesdays and Fridays instead of down somewhere in the wilds of Binfield Heath. And the first thing we'd done already before moving in was to start bringing nurses in to working in the practice. Now at that time, the majority of GPs had no nurses working on the premises. They had a district nurse who came and looked after patients in their homes, but very few practices had nurses actually working with them in the building. So the first thing we decided was we needed to have nurses working with us, and with a bit of adjustment to the side of Peter's house, we managed to get them in. And we did a number of publications around the sort of work that nurses were now doing, encouraging other practices to do the same. We started functioning as a proper team, as William has told you. We had coffee breaks every morning, even if it was only for 5 minutes. It was just to make sure that everybody was on board and there weren't any major problems. We had audit meetings once a week. We looked at the care we were providing to see if we could do it any better. So that was all part and parcel of starting to build things. We had an office, it was somewhere around there on the lower floor, for the health visitors and district nurses who up to now had not really been part of the practice. And so they came in and formed a base in the building, and we started, with their permission, to expand the role of the health visitor. And in a while they were doing cervical cytology clinics and family planning clinics, and you have to realise the vast majority of health visitors they were just doing children under 5 and new mums, and most of them weren't very keen to move any further, even though they were highly qualified nurses. And not for the first time, doctors elsewhere would say to me, "You can't do that," to which I would reply, "Well, we've done it and it works and they like it." And some of these nurses and health visitors are with you today, and hopefully they'll corroborate what I've been saying. We pulled all our diabetics back from Reading. They were all going up. We had about 140 diabetics, and they were all going up to the Royal Berks every 6 months and seeing a different junior doctor. So we thought it would be easier for them to come here. We had a district nurse and a practice nurse trained up specifically for diabetes, and so the majority of them came to the health centre, and that seemed to work reasonably well. By now, we were producing a number of publications on the way we were developing the team, and we were asked to go and make a number of presentations to other practices, to meetings of nurses, and so on and so forth. And we usually got the response, "You can't do that," to which we said, "Well, we've done it." As a result of the way in which the teamwork was developing, we were asked to have the first 3 graduate nurses from Manchester University come to the practice, because the nursing officer at Oxford realised that they would get a good support here, which they might not elsewhere. It's rumoured that the chief nursing officer referred to us as those naughty boys at Sunning Common, but actually she was quite proud of what we were doing. And so we had 2 health visitors and 1 district nurse from Manchester University. Up to now, nursing training had been purely work-based and not university-based. We had a counsellor we employed who came in once or twice a week, because it was clear that a lot of patients needed the sort of help that they could get, which was in many ways superior to what we might have been offering. We then joined the Reading GP training scheme, which was just coming in at the time, and with 5 other practices in the Reading area, we started that with Tom Stewart as the trainer. And there are a number of ex-trainees here, I'm delighted to say, and we hope you had a good time when you were with us. They used to come for 3 months here, 2 years at the Royal Berks, which included obstetrics and paediatrics, and then another 9 months here. And they were a great addition to the practice, because they stimulated us to think about new things, and they were much appreciated. We had our first female doctor join the practice. I don't know where she's gone, she's here somewhere. Helen McKeown, there you are. Right. And that was fairly novel, because the majority of GPs and doctors then were male, and I think there were just 3 females in my year at medical school, and you can see how things have changed since then. So that was an innovation. And then in the middle of all this, the Regional Hospital Board asked us if we'd take responsibility for a ward of 15 beds up at Pepford Hospital, which was a thriving part of Reading Hospitals at that stage. And so we took that on. This was a pilot for the first new style community hospital, which was built at Wallingford. And now, of course, the whole concept of community hospital has changed again. So that was an extra chunk of work we had to do, but it was nice having somewhere to have our own patients transferred to after surgery. Anyone here been in Norman White Ward? Yes, 1 or 2, yeah. And so that went on until the hospital shut in 1980. As Williams mentioned, we were the first practice to have a computer, or one of the first. It was a pretty rudimentary affair, because it was a slave terminal in the office connected to the computer, which was under the stairs in an Oxford practice, connected by a landline. And there were 4 other practices involved, and they all seemed to be miles away at Milton Keynes and goodness knows where. And so we were able to transfer the entire list of patients onto the computer, so that we had a way of beginning to analyse how many had had cervical smears, how many had had immunisations, and so on. So it was all right until somebody forgot to dust the cupboard up at Oxford, and then the whole system would go down. And Tom Stewart was the partner who worked hard to keep it going, and was a great expert by the end as computers for what we were up to. William said that he couldn't find his way some of the time, and other things, He was also, you won't mind me saying, completely disorganised, which we discovered at the interview when we asked him what his surgery looked like the previous day. And he said, well, there's notes all over the place, and there's sticking things on this, that, and the other. But of course, the receptionist loved him, and so they picked up all the bits, and thank goodness we appointed you with him. Now, in addition, finally, to all this, we were, of course, doing all our on-call at weekends and nights, to begin with twice a week, and then eventually once a week when we joined up with Nettlebed, and the same with weekends. Our wives are going to tell you a bit about what that was like and spill the beans about what was going on behind the scenes. Anyway, just to summarise, it's been a great practice to work in. We had a lot of fun, and I think that was partly why we were able to hopefully provide good care to the village and the villages beyond. And so I'm going to hand over now to Tom Stewart's widow and my wife, and they'll tell you what it was really like.